With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Yeah, welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, she's becoming one of our favorites, but that's for good reason because she is great and wonderful. She has a couple of our long forms on communism and on Machiavelli, her favorite subject. Make sure you check them out. But we're going to talk a little current events today. She's been writing in Reason. Amanda Griffiths, she's back. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm wonderful, Andrew. Wonderful to talk with you and your listeners.
Yeah, we love having you on. Okay, we got some trouble out in your land out there in California. You left coast folks do some funky thing. Let's just start with this because we're going to be talking about cryptocurrency and regulation here. I like to start with honesty, right? I've tried, Amanda. I've tried to understand cryptocurrency. I've tried to learn about it. I've honestly tried. There's people I really respect who've done really well with this, who know this stuff inside and out. They think it's great. I know other people who there's a little bit of an ick factor and there's some weird, dirty stuff that goes on with this. Just start with cryptocurrency for the folks that just honestly, just the honest skeptic people. Mm-hmm. Tell us your definition of cryptocurrency, where you're at on it. I'll tell you where I'm at. I tried. I can't get there. I don't want it regulated into oblivion, but I don't really understand it either. Where are you at on this?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, how much do you understand fiat currency really and how that works? But I didn't say it's true. I'm similar to you. We're all beginners because every time we learn something about cryptocurrency, Andrew, the market changes. Cryptocurrency, it casts a really wide net. First of all, you had this initial cryptocurrency. Everyone knows the name, or almost everyone knows the name, Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is a specific type of cryptocurrency. You also have various types of decentralized finance. You might have heard of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, sort of digital artwork. You might have heard of Ethereum. Ethereum is a completely different type of cryptocurrency than Bitcoin, for instance, because it allows creators to build various platforms, to build other coins. And everyone's asking, well, why does this even matter? Why do I care? Cryptocurrency initiates not just a new advent of currency competition, where people who are in regimes with unstable currencies or currencies that they don't trust can exit those regimes, exit those currencies, and try out other forms of exchange. Currency competition in this regard also allows us to really rethink what the way that we denominate value can mean. That's a very broad, very intellectual answer for you, but I'm excited for the potential of the cryptocurrency and what's called the Web3 decentralized finance space. First of all, because of the accessibility options that it provides people who don't have a stable either way of storing assets, or even when their fiat currency isn't a stable store of value. And I'm also excited for the way that it changes the way that we think about how we express value. Not all cryptocurrencies do the same thing in terms of why they're valuable. So cryptocurrency, hugely wide net, and there are a bunch of different types.
Yeah, Amanda Griffith joining us. Web3 is a whole different beast. That's like trying to explain the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe instead of just one character or even one movie. Let's put that to the side for a second because we'll really lose folks.
You lose me. I honestly.
Yeah, you know, this is your area of expertise, though, the relationship between the individual, the market, and the state. All economics breaks down to the relationship between the individual, the market, and the state. We're going to Reader's Digest this so even I can understand it, and then you can explain it to folks. The idea between crypto and the selling point, you just touched on it, was, well, we're going to back the state off, and this is going to be more individual to individual and individual to market, and the state's not going to be involved. Critics like me, being upfront here, was like, well, that's going to be okay for a while, but at some point, the state's going to come for this. And that's where we are now, where it was inevitable there was going to be friction, because when you set something up to reduce the role of the state in a currency You used fiat. That's another term you can break down. This is probably a good way to explain it. At some point, the state was going to come for this because there's no way they cannot coexist. They're going to have friction. That's what we're seeing now, like in California, like in the EU, like in other places. The states and the governments are coming for this currency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to a certain extent, they can. There are certain types of cryptocurrencies that can be monitored, can be regulated. There are other types, like Bitcoin, that really can't. But what is true, and what you touched on, to be fair, is that when you have states coming for, going after cryptocurrency, anytime you have, let's take it out of cryptocurrency. Anytime you have a government, a centralized body coming in and saying, we're going to centrally plan this, we're going to manage what businesses can and can't do with this operation, then what happens if you've got people, if you've got a stock market, for instance? What happens when the government tries to overregulate the stock market or private companies? Well, what happens is that a lot of times traders will exit, and that will put downward pressure on that market. Now, sometimes there needs to be more trust in the market, so people are able to say, okay, I actually trust that this is being regulated a little bit more. I'm going to buy in. But because with cryptocurrency, the entire pitch is we're exiting this other institution, this fiat institution, this idea of a centralized central bank setting the price or setting the value of something arbitrarily. When those same regulators come in and say, we want to monitor, we want to police, we want to track these users, that again, that's going to put downward pressure on the crypto market. So anytime, for instance, you have a huge state like California, a very populous state like California, that is denied access to various types of cryptocurrency or cryptocurrency competition and exchange, as there was a bill recently that attempted to do that, you are going to not just have problems in California with California investors and what they're able to do. That bears on the worldwide crypto market, because you are cutting off a lot of potential investors from and potential creators, right? Developers from the overall market. You're cutting off really infinite avenues for innovation. We don't even know what we don't know.
So that gets us to this bill in California. Amanda Griffiths joining us. This bill in California, before we get into what happened, let's start with what it is. We need to walk through this kind of slowly because there's a couple of layers here. AB 2269. This was a Democrat-sponsored bill. Of course, Democrat has supermajority in California. What the Democrats want, they usually get within a few minor, sometimes the constraints of the law, sometimes the opposition gets a little wave at when they go by on things. This got pushed through pretty fast. What was actually in this bill before we get to what happened after the bill was passed, AB 2269, this cryptocurrency bill?
Yes, AB 2269. So this is a bill that is very similar, if your listeners are familiar with, and it's okay if they're not, familiar or at least heard of New York's BIT license law. If anyone has talked about cryptocurrency and how how easy it is to deal in cryptocurrency in New York. It's not great. A lot of it has to do with the bit license law. There are two main problems with AB 2269. Now, one of them is that it would have forced all cryptocurrency exchanges to apply for and obtain state-issued licenses in order to operate in California. I will break that down a little bit more. A cryptocurrency exchange is a platform, any type of platform, like an app or a website where cryptocurrencies can be bought, sold, swapped, anything at all. Any place where you exchange, think of any place where you exchange money, or any place where you swap different types of currencies. You go to the airport, you have a currency exchange. Cryptocurrency exchanges like that, and a lot of times it's digital, it's on an app. Coinbase is a very famous cryptocurrency exchange, but there are also kind of smaller, more niche ones. And these smaller, more niche cryptocurrency exchanges that are just getting their start are very often those places where they'll carry newer tokens that are a lot more volatile. But before before those major.
See, now you're doing it.
Yeah,
How am I supposed to
exactly,
keep this straight?
exactly,
Because you got all these
exactly.
letters after your name, and I can't figure it out. And look at you.
Crypto, coin, what? Okay, but before Coinbase and other areas, other platforms are able to scoop them up. So this would have required all of these different exchanges to get a banking license. That would really kneecap these small exchanges, because once again, you are applying to the state, and these state regulators that don't understand how cryptocurrency exchange really works, it would curtail them, cut them off from being able to get in on this game. And then, of course, it would cut off consumers' access to these different platforms and applications. And again, it would cut off their access to, yes, more volatile assets, but it would cut them off to those assets in those initial stages, when usually, if they're going to skyrocket in price, they do so during those very, very early launch stages.
Okay. And Amanda Griffiths joining us. We need to do one more foundational thing here before we get into what happened. California is not a normal economy. California is the largest subnational economy in the world. What do I mean by that? If California was its own country, it'd be the sixth largest economy in the world. It would be slotted somewhere between Germany and India, which is remarkable when you consider sometime in the spring, India is going to be the most populous nation in the earth. Okay, Germany is the powerhouse of Europe. It almost single-handedly drives the EU. This is a massive economy, and to kind of go back to what you said earlier, California knows this. Gavin Newsom knows this. Policymakers know this, especially policymakers on the left and in the Democratic Party. Worldwide, folks know that if you can get certain things passed in California, it has worldwide implications because of the size of California's economy. That's why things like their regulation of the gig economy, their regulation of crypto, this is not just a U.S. thing. This really is a global test case, just like as if a Germany, a Russia, a China, these other countries are trying to get in on regulating cryptocurrency. If they can do it at California, it will have worldwide implications.
Absolutely. And I should have mentioned, by the way, there were two problems with this bill, really. And the first is what we just touched on, with that limiting, you have to apply for this banking license. That's a cumbersome waiting game, even to be a cryptocurrency exchange. There's something else, because there are a lot of people who deal in cryptocurrencies that aren't technically exchanges, right? These are like developers and people like that. Now, even there, the second prong of the bill that is so problematic, this assembly bill, would have banned all businesses not licensed by the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. You talk about a lot of letters, DFPI, from dealing in stable coins. And again, if you're not licensed by the California DFPI, you're not a bank. So big banks could deal in these things called stable coins, and non-banks, these small niche developers, these individuals couldn't. Why are stable coins important? This is an area where I was initially kind of skeptical about, what's the big deal behind a stable coin if it's just like a dollar. Well, stable coins, and here's where we get to the worldwide implications. This stable coins are kind of like a middleman. They allow exchanges and developers to convert tokens and transfer information. If you've got a platform that holds US dollars as an asset, which just about every crypto platform does, if they hold them on reserve, usually those dollars are stored in the form of the stablecoin USDC, which is the digital US dollar token. It's pegged to the value of the US dollar. And again, stablecoins are pegged to these more stable stores of value like the US dollar, and that makes them a little bit more secure. Why don't people just use dollars? Well, partly because they're easier to transact. They're easier even than a credit card. You don't need to have access to a bank to have access to a stable coin, which is great because there are a lot of unbanked and underbanked individuals in this country and around the world who don't have access to lines of credit and who don't have safe access to banks, who don't know that their money is even going to be safe in a bank. So they have been able, for the first time ever in history, to use things like stable coins that are essentially the same thing as a dollar or another type of currency to get in and actually have access to financial independence and to be able to buy things. In Ukraine, for instance, these things have been a godsend to people. So stable coins are immensely valuable all around the world. They're so much more secure. And again, with stable coins, this bill here would have banned any business that's not licensed by the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation from dealing in stable coins. That if you're dealing in cryptocurrency, you're dealing in some level on stable coins because a lot of conversions are taking place somehow through that middleman of a stable coin. This would have basically cut off Californians from crypto and decentralized finance development and access. Would have been very damaging.
Yeah, Amanda Griffiths joining us. Okay, so that's a lot of runway to get to what happened. What happened was Gavin Newsom, current governor of California, who, it's no big secret, has other ambitions, national ambitions, who is running a lot of media, laying the groundwork because it's no big secret he really wants to be president of the United States sooner rather than later. He vetoes this thing. Now, this is a Democratic bill through a Democratic supermajority that Democrats really, really want, and he vetoes the thing. But his explainer was telling because of why he actually did what I always ask politicians, so credit here. He was very specific on why he vetoed this legislation, but the answer is not what cryptocurrency folks are going to want to hear, was it?
No, it was not. This is another classic case of a politician doing what appears to be the right thing for all the wrong reasons. It was a surprise that Governor Gavin Newsom, I call him Gavin with the good hair because he does have good hair. California Governor Gavin Newsom did veto this bill that was passed by and sponsored by fellow Democrats. So people were wondering why? Why did this happen? Well, in a statement, Governor Newsom said, and I will quote here from this statement, that it was premature. Oh, well, why? It was premature to lock a licensing structure in statute without considering forthcoming federal actions. Basically, this is paving the way for more stringent federal regulation. Not only is Governor Newsom saying it's premature, it's not premature to pass this bill because it might cut off innovation in the crypto market. It's not premature to pass this bill because it doesn't acknowledge the speed and the rapidity of that innovation and the lack of bureaucratic understanding of the space. It's premature because we actually need more regulation, and it needs to come from a more centralized body. It's a huge problem for an industry whose entire value add, whose entire pitch is we are decentralized. We're all about decentralization. And if you kick the can to further and further decentralized body, you're doing what any type of regulation will do in that regard, which is initiate central planning and then cut off that decentralized potential, cut off that innovation that can only happen when more people are able to do more things and have more choices.
Amanda Griffiths joining us. I actually, in a vacuum, agree with the statement that he issues here when he says a more flexible approach is needed to ensure regulatory oversight can keep up with rapidly evolving technology and use cases. I agree with that in a vacuum. The thing is I can read. I know quite a bit about Governor Newsom because I study him, because I do think he's going to be a political force in the future. Like we already said, he helms the 6th largest economy in the world. I have to pay attention to how this man governs. I know he's coming at that from the different angle than I am, even though I agree with him in a vacuum there. I and folks like you, even though I don't fully understand cryptocurrency, I'm skeptical of it in a lot of ways. I don't want it regulated into oblivion. I think it's an option that folks should be entitled to have, even though there's some icky stuff that, quite frankly, in a vacuum, yeah, there's some stuff about crypto that probably needs to be regulated because there is untoward stuff and there is icky stuff and there is criminal activity involved. At the same time, I also know how government regulation works, and you're going to get the baby out with the bathwater with it. Is there an answer here? Because governments are never going to stop trying to regulate this. Crypto's always going to try to fight against it, but at some point, it does have to become fungible. I hate to use that term because NFTs kind of killed this, but it has to become fungible tokens if it's going to be used by the common folks, right? At some point, it's going to get into the area where there's going to be banking, there's going to be regulation, there's going to be financial oversight. And frankly, there should be a little bit of it. Do we have any happy mediums here? Are there any easy answers at all? Or is this just going to be an ungodly mess for time and eternity?
It should be a bit of a mess, when people but so is any type of market, right? Now, when you have people who are criticizing, as you did, and I think there are valid criticisms of the crypto space, and you're criticizing the unregulated aspects of it. A lot of times these errors do get caught very quickly by users because you're able to see, okay, this looks kind of scamish. People bring up all the time the recent debacle with these two currencies, Terra and Luna, which were, ostensibly an algorithmic stablecoin scheme. Terra and Luna, this wasn't really a true stablecoin that was pegged to the dollar. You had one coin that was pegged to another coin that was sort of pretending to be pegged to the dollar. This was a bit different from something that's actually like the US dollar token. We don't have to get into the weeds on that, but the idea is that was caught with something with the speed that is much, much more rapid than you say, than you'd have scams in the stock market being caught typically. That's not to say that there shouldn't be any type of federal regulation, but what that type of regulation should entail is a lot of input from creators, from independent investors, from people who know this space and understand it, and who are able to give feedback, give input. It needs to be flexible. All I can say in terms of that is that working with various big centralized bodies is not going to be the answer. Any regulation of this space has to be incredibly flexible, has to acknowledge the potential, yes, for fraud, and also acknowledge the potential for government encroachment and over encroachment in this space that is supposed to be an exit ramp. It also needs to acknowledge the fact that to an extent we can regulate cryptocurrency, to an extent we can track users, and to an extent, for a lot of cryptocurrencies, we can't. And eventually, I think there will be a reckoning that comes due with that, where people will recognize there are always going to be avenues to getting around oversight. And the question has to be, do we want those avenues to only be available to bad actors? Or do we want these avenues to be open to people who are trying to escape totalitarian, authoritarian regimes who are using this veneer of oversight in order to cramp down on people's access, talking in particular about regimes like China here, Venezuela, where cryptocurrencies have been an incredible asset in more ways than one. So when we talk about regulation, we talk about oversight, we need to ask ourselves, okay, when does that regulation also need to bear on the regulators themselves?
Yeah, Amanda Griffiths, that ties into how you ended your piece that, if you're regulating because it's not a bureaucratic enough regulation, that should be a red flag to liberty-minded and freedom-loving people. Look, I don't go as far as some of our libertarian things. I understand we need to have some regulation. I just think we should be skeptical and challenging it. I think regulation should be like negative editing. You have to sell me on why we need the regulation, not the other way around. That's not how we do it. I'm a realist. Where do you see this fight going next? The governor obviously vetoed this. They'll probably just turn around and pass something really similar next legislative session because this is California and this isn't going anywhere. The federal stuff may be a while because Congress looks like it's going to probably be split or at the best very contentious. Where do you see this going next?
They may, although I'm interested because you did mention that Governor Newsom is cracking his knuckles for a presidential run. I'm intrigued by that. I do think it will be entertaining, although I've learned my lesson about hoping that people run simply for entertainment value. I'll just put it that way.
He's not unskilled. Look, he's good on camera. He's not unskilled. You can say whatever you want. He's very progressive, but California people on the right reflexively just knock everything California does. California is a big economy. They've got selling points. No, you can't just write him off as a candidate. You can't.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I'm not as supportive of his at all. I've been very critical of him. No, you can't just automatically write him off on a national ticket because he's going to have some built-in advantages that other people aren't.
Some, although I'll be interested to see what happens when he starts doing national media tours and in terms of the thermometer reading. That said, where does this go? There is a lot of pending federal legislation. There's a lot of talk on the federal level about what's going to happen with the federal government and regulation. I see in the short term a lot of fights going on in Congress about what the government can and should do in this space. I also see, because of the inability to really understand and comprehend this industry, and I don't fully understand it. I understand very little, and I try to break it down for myself, and in the process of doing that, hopefully explain some things to other people as well. Because of where I am and what I know, understanding I probably know more than many of the regulators who would be doing the regulation here, and I don't know much. That to me suggests that in the long run or in the medium term, there's not going to be much effective regulation because people just don't understand what they're dealing with. I imagine that might scare some people. For me, I hear that and I think potential. That's great. There's potential for danger, yes. There's also potential for incredible development and incredible creativity. In terms of the regulation, I've seen a lot of proposals. There are a lot of ways to get around various types of regulation for good and for ill, right? So I'm not sure how effective a lot of these proposals will be, but there will definitely be fights playing out. This will be something certainly to watch in the months and the years to come. That will, of course, bear on any market, on the stock market as well. So this is something that people absolutely need to have their ear to the ground on and be monitoring. This is going to be a major factor in any of your investments, whether you're a crypto person or not. It's going to play a role.
Yeah, and that crypto market swings wildly, and it's very susceptible to news, and it's very susceptible to politics. I got to imagine every time these regulation things up, that market's going to swing even more. And important people have money in crypto, which means their regular assets are going to get affected too.
Exactly.
Amanda Griffiths, the whole piece is in Reason. That's a good get. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Won't return my calls. My DMs are open. We're going to link the whole piece as always. Read it for yourself. Decide for yourself. She also has a lot of links in here, like all good pieces do. You need to go through the links as well. We'll see where this goes. Amanda Griffiths, we always enjoy having you. Let folks know where they can keep up with you until we can get you back on Heard Tell again, whether it's on one of the long forms. We got to do another communism one soon.
We do.
We didn't even scratch the surface on that bad boy. But until people hear from you again, let them know where they can keep up with you and find your work.
Everyone can follow me on Twitter at Ajax the Griff, AJAXTHEGRIFF, and they can also follow me via my contributor page at Young Voices. That's young-voices.com. There's a list of contributors. I'm on there, and you'll see all my latest work, latest media, and I always love to engage with people, get their feedback, and I love to talk about all this kind of stuff. So that's where people can find me. And oftentimes on Heard Tell, talking with Andrew.
Yeah, we're going to keep you in regular rotation because you're great. You bring up interesting stuff. We will link to all that. Amanda Griffith, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's been a blast as always.
Thank you. I drop bombs. Now let me see you go off like a